Our next reader, let's put our hands together for the talented Douglas Kiburz.
I have a bit of a dilemma. I saw there's a sign for textbook buyback, and my textbooks are 45 years old. What's up with that? Daum was a wonderful, unique man. He was a friend to the arts. He marched to the beat of a different percussionist. Hal and I grew up 25 miles apart in southeast Nebraska. We both went to Daum College, Notre Dame, the little Harvard on the Big Blue. Both went to the University of Nebraska Med School. Both got most of our specialty training in Kansas City. Both spent most of our productive years in Sedalia. When Hal passed at 92, I didn't get to say goodbye to Hal, but it's okay because I'll say hello to him once again when we're once more 25 miles apart. So parables, tales, stories, tall or short. Storytelling is probably the oldest art form, which leads me to Jake. Jake was a postgraduate student at a small Midwest university, and he had a pretty good week. He taught some undergraduate courses, he sent off some resumes, he had a pretty good week. And the spirit was uplifted on the weekend because people went to their normal watering holes on Friday, so he was riding his Raleigh bicycle down to the Come Again Soon saloon, and he parked his bike and he made the rounds and saw some friends and chatted. And in late summer, early fall, there's often spontaneous storms, and on a Friday night on a college campus, there's often a spontaneous party, and he noted the address in case he might stop by. And so as he headed out on his bicycle, he'd been to almost every place in town, but he didn't know this street, but he knew he was getting close to the after-hours party when he heard the noise, and it was just loud enough that it didn't alert the police to come and shut it down. He also knew he was close enough because there was some motorcycles and some skateboards and some bicycles and some people on the front porch and a fire pit out back. So he went through and he worked the crowd, and he saw some faces he knew, he saw some tattoos that he knew, and he worked toward the back, and he got his mason jar full of beer from the ice-cold keg, and he thought he'd step out back, and he thought he was alone, but then as his eyes adjusted to the light, he saw that there was somebody over by the fire pit. So he walked over and was most pleasantly surprised there was this beautiful young redhead that was there. And it was serendipity, I guess, but he sat down on his straw bale, and the usual chatter, what's your first name, what are you studying, where are you from, and it was a kind of an otherworldly connection they had, a comfort, and they talked about everything under the rainbow, the entire gamut, and the minutes turned into hours, and the fire turned into embers. And he really lost track of the night and the fact that she might leave until she looked at her watch, and he noted the hour and offered to walk her home. So she said, yeah, that would be fine. Well, as they sat, a fog had drifted over the town, one of these encasing fogs where you took one step and things would appear, a lamppost, a tree, a dog, and one more step and they would disappear. So they walked along talking. They came close to his apartment, his one-room upstairs apartment. He invited her up for tea or coffee or wine or whatever he might have that she might want. And so up there as he made the tea, she perused around, and there were a few banners, there were a few posters, there was Led Zeppelin, there was Yo-Yo Ma, there was Cat Stevens, there was Mary Black, there was two very thirsty plants, and there was an old beat-up violin case. And she asked if she could take a look, and he hesitated for a moment because it was his grandfather's. His grandfather had raised Jake, and he took the violin wherever he went, even though he didn't play himself. But he caught himself and said, oh, of course, sure. So she took it out and went over the frets and the strings and asked if she might play, and he said, absolutely. And so it needed a long overdue tuning, and she began to play a mystical arrangement that was he and his grandfather's favorite tune. And it was a solo concert, and between the serendipitous meeting and the fire and the fog and the meeting led to a athletic and romantic evening. The next day he woke up and opened his eyes, and there was the dent in the pillow where she had been, but it doesn't take long in a one-room apartment to see that she wasn't there. He wasn't too worried because he didn't know of her responsibilities the next day, But then he became a bit frightened. He never caught her last name or a phone number or address. But with an angelic figure like this, how could you lose somebody in a small town? So he was driven to find her. He went to every coffee shop. He went to every hangout, went to every library, and could not find hide nor hair of her. He went back to the same house where he'd met, and nobody remembered seeing her or even meeting her. Well, time carries on. He finished his graduate studies. He got an offer to go back to his alma mater, where he distinguished himself in his teaching, in his research, and actually got a sabbatical. So he went back to the land of his forefathers in Ireland, and he soaked up the culture. He went to every pub, every poetry reading, every concert. One day he was riding through the park and caught sound of a stringed instrument, and he followed with his bicycle through the park till he came upon small trees and a gazebo, and there was a young girl playing what turned out to be the same song that his grandfather and he loved so much. And he watched her play very deftly and noticed she had a very small crook in her small finger. Most people would never notice such a small anomaly, except that his grandfather had that, and he had that as well. So as he scanned the crowd, there was a flash of red, and he saw his long-lost, mysterious girl. And she was looking straight into his eyes, and her mouth curled up in a smile, and she patted the empty seat beside her.